Well, you might be wondering, why is Abigail sat with all her Australian flags out when the Australian Open has been over a week? Well, one answer to that question is I leave everything last minute. And the other answer to that question is that so many people kept asking me to do a review of the Australian Open finals that I couldn't say no. So well done if that was you. I'm here. It's a week on, but I guess if you're here and watching, then you've not fully moved on from the Australian Open and don't mind taking a quick look back at what happened in the finals to make sure those scorelines turned out the way they did. 2 straight sets victories, one for Naomi Osaka over Jennifer Brady, and the other for Novak Djokovic over Daniil Medvedev. One of them probably kind of expected. From the outset, I thought that Naomi Osaka should be winning that match in straight sets. It was just a question of whether she could handle the mentality of being the higher ranked player and being expected to win in a Grand Slam final for the first time. The other, as much as Djokovic has a phenomenal record in Melbourne and had won 8 out of 8 finals, the stats did not foreshadow that one being a straight sets win. So there's a little bit more meat to get into with that match. But what we're going to do here is first I'm going to take a quick look at the women's final, what went down there, what were the keys to Osaka getting it done in straights. And then we're going to have a look at what went well for Djokovic and what didn't go so well for Medvedev. So if you're here for the first time, do hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with what's going on. We have a regular upload schedule during the Grand Slams, and then for the rest of the season, it's a little bit unpredictable. So if you're subscribed, that is the best way to stay up to date with what is going on here. And we will crack on. I won't spend all day on this because the world keeps turning and we've had a week full of tournaments since these finals, but we will give some closure and we will wrap up the end of a very engaging tournament. I'm not going to lie and say it was the highest quality tennis. I don't think it was all the way through, but what do you expect? The players didn't have ideal preparation. There was the quarantine moving into it. There was always going to be injury trouble. There were always going to be players struggling to hit their top level, and that's fine. It's not always going to be the highest quality, but the competitive fire is always going to be there, and I think hats off to the players for making the best of a pretty tough situation. Naomi Osaka then, now a 4-time Grand Slam champion at the age of 23. She was the number 3 seed in Melbourne. She was up against number 22 seed Jennifer Brady in the final. Brady's first Grand Slam final, Osaka's 4th. She'd never lost a major final previously, and she keeps up that stunning record. It was 6-4, 6-3 for Osaka. This one's quite simple as to why it played out the way it did if we're just looking at it on surface level. There are 2 keys, really, to Osaka coming through so comprehensively, and the first one had been evident right the way through the tournament, and that was her big moment brilliance. That's what kept her in the tournament when she was 2 match points down to Gobinia Muguruza in the 4th round, and after she'd saved that double match point with an ace and a convincing point afterwards to get back to deuce, it was very difficult for me to see Osaka losing in this event because, as I've said, there is a history of players coming through and winning the Australian Open on the women's side after saving match points. Just in recent times, we've seen Lee Na do it, we've seen Caroline Wozniacki do it, we've seen Angelique Kerber do it. So it's very much the place to do it. If you're going to go down match point and come back and stay in the tournament, it gives you strong title hopes at the Australian Open, and that's what Osaka did so well all tournament. For me, apart from potentially in that final set against Muguruza, I don't think she hit her best level. I'm not sure she even came that close to it on a consistent basis. What she was very good at doing was staying in things competitively, waiting for her moment, and then bringing out the quality when she most needed it. That first set against Brady could really have gone either way. 6-4 to Osaka doesn't show really how tight it was. Osaka broke first, Brady broke back. It was very nervy from both of them. And once again, this is understandable. Wasn't the highest quality, a lot of unforced errors, a lot of jitters. And I think people have this mindset and mentality with Grand Slams that because it's the 2 best players of the tournament, therefore it should be the best tennis of the tournament. And I don't think that people should have that outlook, really, because the whole mentality and stage of a Grand Slam final is completely different to anything you've watched in the lead up. It's going to be as difficult for an underdog like Brady going for her first title and looking at that opportunity as it is for Osaka as the heavy favorite to come through and win. So to expect that you're going to go to a Grand Slam final and see both players hit their highest peak of form, that's not the best expectation to have, because that mental factor, and we saw as much in Djokovic's match against Medvedev, has so much more of an effect on the outcome than at any other stage in the tournament. You've proven your physical ability to get to that stage, and once you've got to that Grand Slam final, it's arguable that it is more about the mentality and how you handle yourself. And Naomi even spoke about this after the match. She said that she kind of made peace with herself, that she wasn't going to play her best tennis on the day, and she went out and she rode the ebbs and flows of her game, because it wasn't a solid performance. It wasn't peak Naomi Osaka, but she did peak in the places that she needed to, thanks to not being dragged around left, right, and center, and not letting her mind get taken with her game when it ebbed and flowed. So very key for her was how the back of the first set ended, because she was up against it actually at 4-all and 30-40. So Brady had a break point that would have seen her serving for the set, and Osaka hit a back behind forehand winner. Now, what Osaka did really well throughout this match, even when she wasn't playing at her peak level, her best level, was play strategically. Even throughout the errors that sometimes came, she was going back behind a lot. She was trying to be unpredictable, to not give Brady any rhythm, because for a player like Brady, who is so much based on being powerful and hitting through her opponents, the last thing you want to do is give her a rhythm to roll with, give her a nice clean ball, or just keep sending the ball where she's expecting it. And I think Osaka did well to mix it up, and that came to the fore on that break point when she saved it in impressive fashion, held that game, and then Brady was under a lot of scoreboard pressure, which ultimately she crumbled under pretty quickly. I think it was 30-all on Brady's serve. Osaka got a deep return in, deep cross-court backhand that Brady didn't seem to expect to find the line. She then went for a big shot off it and missed. Then she missed a 1-2 punch into the net, and that was it, set over. And that is how quickly things can change in tennis. That scoring system is brutal, and Brady felt the full force of it. After that, maybe there was a little bit of kind of a shell-shocked element of it for Brady, because that set had slipped away from her so quickly when she had that opportunity to serve for it and suddenly lost it. And so Osaka rode her momentum into the second set, and that was pretty much curtains down, doors closed, because Brady was not hitting her best form. So that brings us to the second point. The first point of this is that Osaka was so brilliant in the big moments. The second thing that was unfortunately really costly to Brady is she was just constantly going for too much. She does let her game run away with her sometimes, and with the tightness that she was showing in the final, she really couldn't afford to be playing the kind of tennis that she wanted to, and that she was continually trying to. And you know, good for Brady for getting to this stage, for sustaining her form from the end of last year. I have nothing but respect for that and for her, but she did not, you know, hit her best level in the final, understandably, and it cost her in some key moments, in some half chances, when all she really needed to do was put the ball in the court, and if it sat up even slightly, she was so tempted to overhit. There was a key moment where she could have got back into things in the second set, and she fully went for an off forehand, so all she needed to do was put it deep in the court, and missed. And she was continuously doing this early in the rallies, which was not helpful, because early in this match, all the shorter points, the points between about 0 and 4 shots, 1 and 4 shots, they were pretty balanced between the two. But the more she started to fall behind, the more Brady seemed to feel like she had to go for a bit more. She had to hold Osaka back. And that really did cost her at the end of the day, because I think she started doing that before she really needed to, or before the scoreboard even suggested that she needed to. She really just felt the pressure of Osaka's presence, and definitely was feeling the need to try and get on top of things early, to the point where she was just overhitting, didn't have the timing, wasn't on top of it. And ultimately, all those unforced errors did pile up. 15 winners to 31 unforced errors for Brady, so that is double the number of unforced errors to winners. You sometimes take those numbers with a pinch of salt when you look at the stats, but when it's that heavy, you do have to take that into consideration as being a big factor in the final result. Osaka just held her head better. She kept her focus. She identified those key moments. She peaked for them. The serve was stronger on her side of the net, and she was able to get herself going on some key returns. And there it was, the straight sets win for Osaka, 6-4, 6-3. And I can see that some of you are here live, and the live chat is there for a reason. So if you have any questions related to either of these two finals or the players in them, leave them in the chat. I won't stay here forever just going through all the questions, but if there are any standout good questions, I will get to answering them at the end of the video. So if you're here live, make the most of the opportunity and send in some questions. That's the women's final. Full credit to Naomi Osaka. 4 out of 4 major finals won, and she definitely seems to have the head game and the physical game to become a staying power at the top of the women's game, which is something that it's been lacking a little bit in recent years. So interesting times with Osaka asserting herself there. And still more interesting times as Novak Djokovic goes to a perfect 9 of 9 finals win in Melbourne, which is just staggering, really. It's only eclipsed, I guess, within current tennis by Rafael Nadal's 13 French Open titles. And I mean, who's touching that? So big stuff from Djokovic. 7-5, 6-2, 6-2 over Daniil Medvedev, who at least 50%, I think, of people were taking to win this match, and I completely understand that. Looking at the statistics heading into this match, it had them both pretty level as it could be when one of them had won 8 of 8 finals and the other one was making his debut appearance. And I think I mentioned in the preview and predictions video for this match that most of the polls that I saw just generally on social media had Medvedev pretty heavily favored to win this match. And I think some of that was probably just fan support, but it does show you that people were expecting this one to be close. And I'm not going to change my mind just because it played out the way it did. I picked Djokovic to win. If you watch the video, you'll know. But I did think it would extend straight sets with the level, the sheer dominance that Medvedev had brought throughout the tournament when he needed to. I expected him to have more of an impact, and the straight sets outcome for Djokovic, I don't know if I should have seen it coming, really. Credit to anyone who did, but the stats, as I say, did not foreshadow it. And that's just another emphasis on the fact that mentality counts for so much in these occasions. People played that down with Djokovic. I didn't play that down, despite the fact that I thought it would be a closer match. The reason that I edged towards Djokovic was because of that history and because of his mentality and because he knows when he needs to bring his best. But yeah, that's one thing that the stats don't show, the head game. And, you know, if we're going to keep this absolutely basic, at the bottom of things, at the baseline, that is what won Djokovic this match, having the better head and the better kind of rational thinking. But there is a bit more to it than that. And also, while this was straight sets like the women's final, I feel like this was a closer contest than the women's final. Yeah, there was a pretty close first set for Brady and Osaka, but from there it was pretty much one-way traffic for Osaka. Whereas with this one, I didn't watch it all live. I watched parts of the first set and then I was in church for the last couple of sets. I watched a replay, and having looked at the scoreline, I was surprised by how many chances Medvedev actually had to get back in the match all the way through. So we'll come to that in a minute, because as much as the scoreline says 7-5, 6-2, 6-2, I think Djokovic was pushed a little bit more than that scoreline gives Medvedev credit for. So the keys for Djokovic, I think the quick start was pretty big for him. It was right at the beginning of the contest and there was another couple of hours of play to go, but just getting out to that 3-love lead and eclipsing Medvedev at the beginning, I think was massive for his confidence and getting him settled in the match, and was also huge for sending a warning across the net to Medvedev as to what he was up against. Because coming into this match, Medvedev had played Andrei Rublev, who he dominates in their head-to-head. He'd played Stefanos Tsitsipas, similar situation. Tsitsipas playing really well, but a game style and a matchup that Medvedev has liked in the past, and also a dominant head-to-head record. So he's coming in to face Djokovic, with whom he has a closer head-to-head, and also in their most recent meeting at the ATP finals last year, that was a Djokovic that was very much below his best. He was tiring, didn't have as much energy, and as much as Medvedev did dominate him, pull him around the court, absolutely play with him at times, that was not the Djokovic that he was coming up against in the Melbourne final. So with that quick start, Djokovic showcased his ability on serve, on the return, and his composure mentally, and immediately heaped a load of pressure on Medvedev. And yet Medvedev did break straight back and did get to 3-all, and that first set was anyone's. But at the back end of the set, when Djokovic broke to love to get the 1-set-to-love lead, that might just have been playing in Medvedev's mind, the fact that Djokovic had exhibited how strong he was in every single area. And at the end of the day, that was it. Djokovic was stronger on turn, he was stronger on the return, and Medvedev at times looked like he was struggling to see openings and was struggling to stay committed to a particular game plan or have the consistency to execute as the match wore on. So that quick start was big for Djokovic, coming out really sharp, just giving himself some breathing room. I think some people might have had questions after the semi-final. He beat Aslan Karatsev pretty comprehensively, but at the end of the day, Karatsev is a qualifier. Djokovic had struggled in his previous matches, and there had been questions about his physical fitness as well. But I think Djokovic made a really statement with the opening to this match, and played some of his best tennis of the tournament to open this final, which, I mean, what more can you ask for? So he made a real statement there. And that was the first key for him, I think, getting that quick start and just warming himself so quickly into the match. But then the sharp return game to break for the opener. We know how potent Medvedev's serve has been coming into this final. Very strong service numbers. In fact, he had marginally better first serve numbers than Djokovic coming into this match. But the big thing, the big deal that ultimately made a huge difference here was that Djokovic was winning a lot more second serve points. And right from the start of this encounter, really, actually in his second return game, Djokovic fired a forehand return winner up the line off a Medvedev second serve. And that was just him saying, I'm going to get so many more cheap points on your second serve than you are on mine. Because Djokovic has been routinely throughout this tournament going big off first and second serve. He's very smart with the way he places his second serve. Medvedev, comparatively, has a bit of work to do on that second serve. When he's firing that first serve, it can be untouchable. But the second serve is a little bit more easy to predict. He's not doing so much with it as Djokovic, and against a player like Djokovic, who is essentially the best returner in the game, that was something he was always going to expose. And once again, as with Osaka, it's that big moment mentality that allowed Djokovic to just peak for that final game. Love 40 up. He put a cross-court return at the feet of Medvedev. Medvedev puts the forehand into the net, and that's it. That's the game. It was actually at 40, so it was love 40 Djokovic, then Medvedev won the next 2 points, and then Djokovic hit that return to close the set. And it was over pretty quickly. It had been, from the 3-love for Djokovic, it had been a close set, but Djokovic just knew when to bring it. And I did mention this in the preview video, actually, about the importance of who was serving first, because the stats said this would be close, and whoever had the scoreboard advantage of being up 5-4, 6-5, and Medvedev feeling that bit of pressure, and that's ultimately what happened. I think that this first set went a long way to deciding the outcome of the match, because Medvedev suddenly wasn't sailing anymore. First time he dropped a first set this tournament. The only times he'd actually dropped sets previously was when he was 2 sets to love up against Filip Krajinovic, I think, in the 3rd round. So it was a very different mental situation for Medvedev there, and Djokovic, once again, so sharp on serve and return when he needed to be. But I think the third thing that was really big for Djokovic throughout was that he was coming out on the right end of so many half chances for Medvedev. The final stats of a match show you the break points and the performance of players in those pressure situations, but they don't show you the love 15s and the 15-30s and those little half chances that apply that all-important scoreboard pressure and open up opportunities. And Medvedev did have those opportunities throughout the match. I think more so in the first and second set, and three things tended to happen when he had those half chances. Either it would be on the return and Djokovic would fire a massive first serve, and there's not much you can do about that, really. Or Medvedev would go for too much, too early, and overhit. Or Djokovic would suddenly come out on the right end of a long rally. So it was very much a mix of Medvedev struggling to know when to play what, and Djokovic absolutely bringing the quality when he needed to. I said prior to this match that the key for Medvedev was to extend those rallies, because he was actually performing better throughout the tournament in the longer exchanges than Djokovic, which is strange because both of these players are so good on the move and so good defensively. But that's what the stats said, that it was better for Medvedev if the rallies extended. And we did see that in the first couple of sets. Medvedev was winning a lot of the longer exchanges. Djokovic came out on the right side of some key ones to get that quick early lead. He also mixed it up, used the slice, got the balls deep, as I said he needed to. But Medvedev was slowly getting onto the front foot with those lengthier rallies and really easing his way into them. It was unfortunate, I think, and maybe showed a little bit of tightness for Medvedev that in some of those half-chance moments, Djokovic was able to come out on top of those longer rallies. And it did just showcase Djokovic's confidence as well. He talked a great talk coming into this match, and he fully backed it up. And, you know, with his record at the event, he did deserve to have that confidence coming into it. But that is something that Medvedev will look back on and see he needs to do differently. He needs to play with a bit of a clearer mind and play on his terms more than thinking about his opponent and what the opponent's going to do. And that's a trap that's very easy to fall into with Djokovic, because he is so all over the place, like everywhere, covering everything, that you're constantly torn between what do I have to do, but what do I have to do that's going to keep these balls and these shots away from Djokovic. And I think that definitely in these pressure moments, the little moments hidden within games that didn't seem to have a big impact, but in the grand scheme of things actually did, there was probably moments there for Medvedev where he was torn between what he wanted to do instinctively and what he felt he needed to do to combat Djokovic. And you can't afford for your mind to be torn like that. You have to be completely locked in and zoned in to your game plan, which Medvedev struggled with. So throughout the first couple of sets, a huge amount of those close moments were going Djokovic's way. And then when it came to the third set, some of those chances were still there, but Medvedev was pretty much gone mentally. He didn't have the focus anymore to take advantage. And this is what I was saying about Medvedev throughout the tournament. To beat him, you have to frustrate him. And by taking the first two sets in the manner in which he did, Djokovic definitely frustrated Medvedev. And there were opportunities for him even in the opening game of the final set. There was, what was the score? It was actually 30-40, so it was break point for Medvedev, and he hit a short cross-court return that Djokovic had to move right up the court for. Djokovic hit a cross-court backhand because it was pretty much the only option for him from that position in the court, sent it straight to Medvedev. Medvedev had the court open, and he sent the forehand long. All he had to do was put it deep in the court, and he sent the ball out. And the body language and the frustration was just so tangible and so evident for Medvedev there. And that's something that he can look back on and learn from, because at any other stage in the tournament, 2 sets to love down, I don't think Medvedev would have been writing himself off. We saw Stefanos Tsitsipas come back from 2-0 down to beat Rafael Nadal. So if that's happening, it shows that nothing's impossible. But after dropping the first 2 sets, I think that's where the occasion and the significance of the match really got to Medvedev and really started to weigh down on him, because he definitely had those shots and chances to get back into the match. And it was a 50-50 really of clutch from Djokovic and haywire from Medvedev, because understandably the moment was getting to him at that point, and there were some choices that would have been pretty basic to him in another situation that he got wrong. So that was probably the third key really for Djokovic to netting that one in straight sets, 7-5, 6-2, 6-2. Just a brilliant performance from Djokovic, knowing when he needed to peak. Like I say, there's always a wobble for a player at some point within a match, and Osaka and Djokovic both kept theirs to where it wasn't so significant. Djokovic had a couple of hiccups in the second and third sets, but look how dominantly he won them by scoreline. So very much a timing thing, and the players that are winning the big points are going to be the players that win the tournament and ultimately win championship point, as Osaka and Djokovic did. So Djokovic comes through and the big three reign supreme once again. We hear this same old rhetoric, this same old question of when will the big three be dethroned? When will the next gen break through? And you know what? Medvedev was riding a 20-match winning streak, so I don't blame people for thinking that this could be his moment, but I still think people lack respect for the sheer mental strength and physical ability of Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer that mean they are still, when it matters, a couple of steps ahead of the rest of the tour. I don't think people should be dumping on the likes of Medvedev and Zverev and Tsitsipas and talking them down. They've proven that they can beat these guys over best of 5 sets. They can make clashes pretty 50-50 during best of 3 sets, but the Grand Slam finals are always going to be such a different mental occasion. And what Djokovic taught the world in this final is that the big three still have the upper hand. And as much as some people want them gone, they ain't going yet. So big stuff from Djokovic and big stuff from Osaka. Having wrapped that up, I am now going to take a quick look at the chat and see what people have been talking about. I saw the GOAT debate coming up from time to time, which shouldn't be surprising, I guess. Someone says 2 disappointing finals. You can look at it in that way, I guess, in that all 4 players, 3 of the 4 players, let's say, have a better level than what they brought to the final. I thought Djokovic brought a very high level to the final. The other 3 players could have performed better, but at the same time I think Medvedev was held back and shut out by the sheer quality of the serve and return from Djokovic. And you know, Osaka didn't have to play her best because Brady frankly wasn't putting enough balls in the court. So you can call it disappointing, but at the same time I think people need to kind of measure their expectations when it comes to Grand Slam finals, because as I've said, mentality is a big deal and there's so much pressure when it comes to these final showdowns. So yes, people need to measure their expectations. Djokovic winning was not good for tennis. I disagree. I think that the big three's dominance is something remarkable. I think it definitely lifts the profile of tennis within sport. And I think we've got a good mix at the moment, really, of the legends of the game still reigning supreme and the younger guys doing more. Tsitsipas has won the ATP finals, Zverev has, Medvedev has. Medvedev is now pushing and beating top players regularly. So many of those 20 wins that he compiled in the streak came over top 10 players, and you just can't talk that down. I think the sport is in a very good place, and if people don't, there's not much I can say about that, but I think that, you know, particularly on that men's side, I think they're doing a great job of giving it a good profile. Can Osaka adapt/translate her game to clay and grass courts? Good question. Very interestingly, the first time I really took notice of Osaka was when she was playing on clay courts against Simona Halep at the French Open. I'm thinking that would have been around 2016. So she can translate her game well to clay courts. She should be able to translate her game well to grass courts. Can she do it? The first time I actually spoke to Osaka was 2017 in Nottingham, and she had just lost 6-1, 6-1 to Christy Ahn on one of the outside courts. And I remember she actually used the word depressed to describe how she was feeling, and she said at the time, people have told me that my game should translate well to grass, and I'm not seeing it. I don't see how it happens. I think there's more of a chance of it happening now, just because she's really asserted her dominance now on hard courts. She is routinely doing well at the hard court Grand Slams, and her titles outside of the big events have come on hard courts. So she's kind of got that covered, and she needs a new challenge. And the next challenge for her is moving on to make an impact on these other two surfaces. I can see her winning all 4 Grand Slams. I think that she definitely has a game that does translate well. Is she going to be the best player on clay courts? I don't think so. She has the potential to be one of the very best on grass, but that big moment mentality and that big tournament mentality is something that automatically exists across all surfaces. So if she can just become more at ease with playing on the clay and the grass in her mind, I think that she's solved half the problem, because she has a ready-made game to thrive across the board. And yeah, with that being her next focus now, improving her results and improving her game on clay and grass, I expect to be seeing improvement from her in the not too distant future. I'm not sure she'll go straight on to winning the French Open, but I think that we'll see her making progress on both of those surfaces. And the grass court season is kind of hard for everyone because it's so short. If you're not familiar with the surface, you've not got a lot of time to practice on it and get used to it. But, you know, if she works on her movement even a bit more than she already has, those grass courts should be very much in the favor of her playing style. Okay, I am going to keep this strictly to the Australian Open because we could talk all sorts here at the moment. Okay. Do I think anyone will beat Margaret Court's 24 Grand Slam titles now, male or female? I mean, on the men's side, you can't really write off. Federer is more questionable because of his physical fitness, but I don't think you can put a cap on what Nadal and Djokovic can achieve at the moment. So I can see probably both of them surpassing that number. For Serena, she's the closest on the women's side. And it just becomes harder the more she comes close and the mental game lets her down. So I won't write her off because she's Serena Williams, but the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes. And the thing is, you know, tennis is going to go on for years and years to come, and there are always going to be players that come up in different eras and are chasing after records. And who's to say, or who's not to say, that a player won't emerge on the women's side in 10, 20 years time who outdoes even the titles that Serena has compiled? I think if Osaka carries on the way she is, that's certainly going to be something she has her eye on. So yeah, I don't like putting a lid on what can be achieved because there's always going to be someone chasing those numbers. What else do we have? Okay. I think that some people are pretty convinced by that 24 titles record. Nadal or Djokovic will end up as the greatest of all time. Who's to say it's going to be either of them? I don't get involved in the GOAT debate because it's just so subjective. And it's never going to have an answer. I think that people should just appreciate the number of great players that we have competing in the sport at the same time right now. I don't see why people find that so difficult, but there we go. There will always be that obsession with that debate, I guess. Okay, I think that we're going to wrap up shortly. Someone says, good question, will Daniil Medvedev ever learn to play on clay? I think that he really should have a game that matches up well to a clay court because, you know, he's so good. He's so consistent at the back of the court and does so well in those longer rallies, which are a given when you come to clay courts, which is so demanding of stamina and that kind of thing. That was something I meant to mention regarding the final, actually. Medvedev's return position, he's so far back, which gives him good reach and good chance of getting the return back in play and getting into the rally. But because Djokovic was winning so many quick points, Medvedev, with his stance so far behind the baseline, he was struggling to get back on an even pegging sometimes, and that's why Djokovic was dominating those shorter points. But back to clay courts and Medvedev, yeah, he should be able to get there. As with Osaka, it's something to work towards. And yeah, naturally, with the way he likes to play, that matches up well to a clay court. His serve is still going to be effective because he's got good placement on the first serve. I think the issues that he sometimes has with the second serve being more attackable, with the way that the clay court slows it down, that's going to sit up even more, and that's probably an opening for players. But with Medvedev, like I say, so much is on his racket. And it's when he gets frustrated that things become an issue. And while he has this mentality of, I've never won a match at the French Open, I hate clay courts, it's not going to go well for him. So he needs to adjust the mindset and probably doesn't need to tweak too much with his game apart from that second serve and making that stronger and making that less vulnerable. And if he can do that, then he should be a force to be reckoned with, but no looking past Rafael Nadal at the moment. Okay, talk about the injury that Djokovic had to overcome to win the tournament. Yeah, he did say that he had an MRI scan and it was actually an abdominal tear. I don't know what kind of painkillers they were putting him on in order for him to be able to play at that kind of level and keep going throughout the tournament, but look, people kind of have this tendency of playing down injuries within tournaments, or when a player says they have an injury, people accuse them of faking, etc. I don't know how we have so many doctors all of a sudden, but here's the thing, most players are actually playing with some kind of niggle or physical difficulty during their matches. It's just a thing to a lesser or larger degree, and Djokovic clearly was struggling throughout the tournament. I think we saw that with his level in a few of his matches. He said it improved towards the back end. It did. He came through. Double the credit to him that he won the title and that final in such convincing fashion while carrying a physical ailment. As to how much it sets him back now, I can't say because I'm not a doctor, just like other people can't say how much he was hurt or hindered during the tournament, because we just don't know. If you're not Djokovic and if you're not his physio or his doctor, etc., you just can't say. But yeah, he definitely had multiple challenges on and off the court in this tournament, Djokovic, and something about this guy is that he tends to thrive when he has his back against the wall and when he has something to prove, which can only be a good thing for him going forwards. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is aimed at me. I'm not saying that Osaka is the next Serena. I don't think anyone should be labeled the next Serena, but what I'm saying is that they are the kind of records she's going to be aiming for. Serena's 23 or more slams, whatever she ends up with. There are going to be the likes of Osaka and players after her that if they continue on this trajectory, they will be aiming for those kinds of numbers. That doesn't make them the next this or the next that. And Osaka could still get injured or lose her way mentally and not carry on this run of form that she's had going over the last couple of years. That's definitely a possibility. But players like her that are so competitive and so ambitious are always going to be looking at history and records and stuff like that to motivate them, to keep them going. And that's really what I meant with the comments that I made. What's the difference between the mindset and the mentality? I mean, there's not too much of a difference, to be honest. It's all what happens up here. Mentality, I think mindset is more kind of going into something, so from the outset, and the mentality is more actually within a match and how you deal with certain occasions within that. So there is a fractional difference. That's how I would use it anyway. The mindset is kind of from the outset and preparing yourself and going in, and the mentality is more that what happens when you are within something is what I would say. I think I can feel my throat going, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up very shortly. Okay. I'm not going into French Open predictions yet. It is a while away, and I would rather have a little bit of a rest from predictions, although I have to say, the Australian Open predictions from semi-finals onwards, all the winners went the correct way, so I am definitely going to be paying equal attention to stats as I did during this tournament in the future, and trying to make these videos worth your time. So yeah, I think after some semi-success at the Australian Open, I'll take a little bit of a breather from the predictions, but subscribe to the channel so that you know when the next preview and predictions videos will be coming, when the next live Q&As will be coming. I can't confirm when that will be, so subscribe so that you know. Thank you to everyone that has watched this live. Yeah, I did forget my water again. It's, yeah, I've really got to get back to grips with that, with having something with me. Right, I'm gonna wrap it up because I actually have more work to get on with. If I've seemed a little bit here and there and scatterbrained in this video, I'm actually in the middle of work preparing for a tournament that I'm working on this coming week. So particularly if you live in the UK, I am commentating this next week on an event called the UK Pro League. It is week 1 of 9, and it is a league specifically for players who are based in the UK to compete against each other, to win prize money, and to get more exposure than they otherwise would. This is for players who are generally ranked outside the top 100, top 200, and this is a kind of platform that they would not usually get if this tournament was not happening. There are some seriously talented players at the lower levels that are kind of working their way up or just lack a little bit of consistency that would have them further up the rankings ladder. I'm very much looking forward to commentating on the tournament, and if you want to watch that and maybe hear me commentating, the tournament will be on BT Sport throughout the week. In the early stages of the week, it will be on the red button, and then it will be on the main BT Sport channel back end of the week. So UK Pro League, if you want to find out more about that, go to ukproleague.com, and that is where you'll hear my voice next. So thank you for following along during the Australian Open. Thank you for so many of you wanting my opinion on the finals to the point that I came and did this video. And I'm going to leave you now. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the tennis over the next few weeks. And whenever it will be, I will see you next time.